Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in today. Welcome back to another episode here on the Adam Hazara Show. This is episode 22. We got a lot to talk about here on the show today, here on Sunday, April 6th, 2025. Of course, a pretty sad week for Lake Braddock Baseball, losing 3 games in a week. They dropped to a 3-game losing streak. We're also going to preview games with them this week at Fairfax, and they host South County as the Patriot District cycle restarts for this season. Lake Braddock Softball continues to roll, improving to 6-2 after wins versus West Oak and Alexandria City last week. We're also going to be previewing their matchups versus Fairfax and South County 2 tonight on the show. Before we begin, of course, make sure you guys hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe, share this with a friend, and make sure to turn on notifications so you do not miss another episode of the show. So, much of those things, as always, greatly appreciated by you guys. And without further ado, let's get started on today's episode of the Adam Hazara Show. So we're going to start off with some Bruins baseball talk here on this one. As always, as we start most times, it is this way yet again. Like we said in the opening, pretty sad week. Not just sad, pretty kind of surprising as well for Lake Braddock standards. They usually don't go on these 3-game losing streaks. Let's start this off with this stat of the day. The Bruins have not had a 3-game losing streak since the 2014 season. So it's been 11 years since Lake Braddock in baseball has lost this many games in a row. Usually they're a team that's always, of course, very consistent with wins. They don't really go on long losing streaks. Now, 3 games isn't really that long of a losing streak, but for their standards, it seems like it feels like 10 games for them. Now, of course, we start off with the first of those 3 losses. And this is what really aggravates me. Couple things that aggravate me about this game. Number 1, we talked about this last week on the pod. Jack Cavalario has yet to start a game for the Bruins this year. All they're doing is pitching out of a bullpen in what he's doing. And the Bruins keep using a struggling Leo DeLoma, who has yet to find any good success in any of his starts this year. Anytime he has a start this year, it does not go well. He is yet to be consistent. He had 2 starts this week. 2 Wednesday and Saturday. Alexandria City, McLean, respectively. 2 very good teams. Of course, McLean, the defending Class 6 champs, were still really good this year. Gave up 3 earned in 3 2/3 innings yesterday. And on Wednesday, he couldn't even get past 2 innings. Not even 2 innings. And Jack Cavalario comes in and fires 5 innings of 1-run ball. And with Cavalario starting off the year with a sub-1 ERA, it looks like. He has yet to make the rotation. I said, last week on a pod that the Bruins going to that Alexandria City game, they need to go with a hotter hand. And they still decided to go with Delomo and still trying to stretch it out with him, trying to give him chances. We're also talking about how the Bruins need a signature win. And they have yet to get that win. And one way they could do that, like I said, was starting Cavalario, who, again, more consistent this year. And, it still doesn't make sense to me why he's not starting. I don't get it. Especially going up against that really good Alexandria City team. That's a game where you couldn't take chances with Delomo on the mound, given his previous track record this year in his, previous 2 starts before that, I believe. I believe he's made 4 starts this year. And the one game, maybe 2 games, he should have not been starting was against Alexandria City and West Springfield. Two of your biggest district rivals. And like I said about Alexandria City, this is no longer this world where it's Lake Braddock and West Springfield. Alexandria City has arrived. They are a legit contender to make the state tournament now. They're going to be a great secondary rival to Braddock alongside West Springfield, who's their main rival most of the time. And, he couldn't get through a good start versus West Springfield the week before. And you're still sticking him out there. And you wonder why the Bruins are so down. They probably don't feel confident. The Bruins look lifeless in some of those at bats they've been working. And that's another thing we'll touch into with that Alexandria City game on Wednesday, coming up in just a few moments. But with the pitching, the way it is right now, and look, I get it, but Bruins have some thin pitching depth this year, outside of Padgett and Cavalario, who've done really well. They're expected to be really good this year, and they've lived up to those big expectations. And of course, one guy who, of course, has been, being out, is really hurting the Bruins' thin depth, is Bradley DeHay. He is apparently out for the rest of the season now, after that UCL sprain. It was speculated he may be out the first few weeks. Now it sounds like he's not even going to be healthy to begin the year. Again, as a really good pitcher, that could have helped out the Bruins rotation alongside Padgett and Cavalario. And he's really hurting the pitching depth. The last few years, you had Jake Drum on the team as the ace. You had Jamie Wiskowski, who was pitching really good innings as well, playing great ball at shortstop and at the plate. You had Henry Steen, who, when healthy, was really good. And then behind him, you had guys like last year, you had Delomo, you had Bo Padgett behind those three. And this year, Wiskowski, Drum, and Steen all gone. And, there's a thin amount of depth on the team. They've had they literally had to call up Hudson Drum, Jake Drum's younger brother, up from JV. Now, again, it mostly had to do with the 3 games in 4 days this week. So they needed, extra pitching. And the only other guy they could go to was Cody Blaylock in an Alexandria City game. And look, you can't overwork these guys because, they're kids. And, of course, in accordance with the VHL rules, with a pitch count stuff, you can't have them pitching every day. You need to have more than 2 pitchers. But again, the Bruins can't really do much with a lot of their pitching right now. But one thing they can do is start Cavalario, who, again, is more consistent. That is going to be the guy who gets you a big win against a team like that. In fact, he should probably be starting this week. And the schedule with South County and Fairfax, who are not nearly as good as Alexandria City or West Springfield in the district this year, he should still be starting. And, even if you're afraid to throw him a big spot like that, you should still be throwing him in. The Bruins need a big shakeup in a rotation. Will Delomo is really, really struggling right now. And this is no knock on him for being a bad pitcher or anything like that. Again, the Bruins needed to go the hotter hand. They blew it. They blew it. Absolutely disgraceful that they're not going with Cavalario over Delomo in that Alexandria game. He should have probably been going over him at West Springfield game too. He should be the one in that rotation. He's the one who's doing really well. And again, you're trying to experiment, take chances. This is not the time to take chances against teams like that. You need big wins. You're struggling. And, maybe you argue, well, it wouldn't matter even if the offense didn't hit. The offense is struggling in a few spots right now, especially around the middle of the order. Guess what? To win a close game like that, have Cavalario on the mound. And guess what? Like I said last week, Bo Padgett should be available in those games. Against, again, like a team like a West Springfield, like an Alexandria City. Padgett and Cavalario should both be available in a game like that, unless it's back-to-back. Those 2 teams back-to-back, which that was not the case. They played both teams in different weeks. And again, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And maybe, you know what? The offense has been struggling in some spots. Maybe they'd have a more sense of hope if, they were starting the better guy. Going with this Lodomo experiment in the starting rotation right now needs to stop if the Bruins need wins. At the very least, you should swap his spot with Cavalario, who's been kind of his guy in Delamo to piggyback him whenever he pitches badly. And that's what it's been. I'm pretty sure Cavalario, now I can't read minds. I don't know what he's thinking. But I'm pretty sure Cavalario is thinking after right now, yes, man, I want to start. I've been pitching my butt off this whole season. I have around a 1 ERA. I've been striking out guys left and right with my nasty curveball. I have great control of the zone. No reason why I can't start. But to at least give if your offense isn't going to score, give them at least a chance to try to win a close game. If you're only going to score 1 or 2 runs by having the best available pitcher on the mound. You're wondering, maybe why he couldn't start Saturday again. Probably for the HSL rules. He pitched 5 innings out of relief versus Alexandria City, so he probably couldn't pitch Friday. He couldn't pitch Saturday at McLean. So that's with the whole pitching. Away with that for now. Let's get into the offense in that Alexandria City game. Few hitters in the middle part of that order have really not been doing the best. Ryan Harding, for one. He, got his first hit. It was a bloop single in that game, I believe. He's still not hitting consistently, though. You have CJ Prentice, who's striking out left and right, and you could see why the Bruins are hesitant to start him. But I think the Bruins just need someone to get him with that power. Again, he has a lot of really good power, around middle part of the line because it struggled so much. So they need him to kind of provide a surge, and they're hopefully waiting for him to break out. But he's struck out quite a few times. So they're hoping, that his consistency will get up and he'll get going. Matthew Holcomb in right field, they're hoping that he gives the Bruins better offense after the disaster that was Oliver Crandall last year. And he's maybe only had a 1 4-hit game against a awful Woodson team out of the 7-8 spots. He had a 4-hit game against arguably a team that has no pitching and that is not even competitive against really anyone. They kind of feel like the Oakland Athletics of the league in terms of the Patriot District. Been really bad the last few years, just like the A's have in MLB. In their field conditions, just like the A's, with the opossums in the press box and the moldy seats. Woodson has screws or nails or whatever sticking out of the fields, warped the bleachers, leaks in the press box. It kind of, it's a really bad situation over there in right across from Fair City Mall, and that's the game that Matthew Holcomb has had 4 hits against. Now, another thing I wanted to point out was that the Bruins were missing Evan George, the Friday game versus West Potomac, and the Saturday game at McLean. He's been battling a sickness. I heard he's had some stomach issues. Should be back sometime next week, hopefully. Hopefully be available for that Fairfax game. But so here are some of the numbers for some of the Bruins starters this season. So the ones who are performing well are, Evan George, Matt Shabe, Dom Quadros have performed well. Evan Chambers, in his 16 plate appearances, is hitting .333. So he's doing good. So he should probably be starting in there more often. But you have Ryan Harding, who has been hitting .125. He has a .391 on base percentage, but not really slugging it. Not what you really want him doing from a 5 spot. Henry Mons has been good, taking over for Matthew Mayer in the lineup ever since he tore his meniscus in the South County game. He's out for a season now. He's posted 820 OPS or so, and this is according to Max Preps. He's batting about 381. Dom Quadros OPS over 1,000. He's doing good. George OPS over 1,200. He's been good. But, like we said, Matthew Holcomb is hitting 278. That's not bad. But he only has 316 on base percentage with a 649 OPS. Bo Padgett, who's been in the Bruins lineup a few times, hoping that he'd be a power source at DH. He's only hitting .083 in 13 plate appearances. CJ Prentice only hitting 231 with a 693 OPS, 231 on base percentage. Struck out 7 times so far this season in 13 plate appearances. So certainly, yeah, there's a lot of holes in that lineup right now around maybe that 5, 6, 7, those 5, 6, 7 spots, especially those 5 and 6 spots where Ryan Harding is really struggling. Again, he's getting on base, but you want him driving in those runs. You would like him to hit for a much higher average. You like Matt Holcomb to be consistent outside of a 1-4 hit game he had against one of the worst teams in the state right now. You'd like Bo Padgett or CJ Prentice to do better. So there's a lot of flaws in a few places with this Bruins lineup right now that need to do better. So, there is, hopefully some hope. I mean, it still is only the, it's still only the first half. There's still a lot of season left right now. It's still only early April. Still a lot of ground to make up. You're hoping that these games against Alexandria City and McLean and West Springfield in the first half will be good for the Bruins to kind of build off some tough losses and use those losses to better themselves and build themselves up to be a lot stronger for the next time they face a couple of those teams in the second half, being AC and West Springfield. And using a loss, tough loss to McLean, 10-8. Bruins were down 6-0 in that game on Saturday. 10-4 eventually. Started scoring some runs. Actually made it 10-8. Made it a little close, but they couldn't come back. So it was kind of a shootout over there. But again, actually probably a better fight than actually what they put up last year against them in the state quarterfinals. But, still, it was a pretty tough loss still. And so obviously, Bruins will hopefully use those losses to build themselves up to be stronger in the second half, and you're hoping maybe they can gain some momentum. But again, a couple things excuse me. I don't know if I was going to... Excuse me, guys, for a sneeze. But anyway, so you're hoping that the lineup, around the 5 to 7 spots will start hitting. You're hoping that, hitters will start posting up higher averages. And a problem with this Bruins lineup this year is that they have no top-end guys really to hit, top-end pitching. There is no D1 commits. Years past, you had Jamie Wiskowski hitting. You had Evan Schick. He wasn't D1. He went D3 to Marymount, but I'm pretty sure you could go D1 if you wanted to. You had Jack McCarthy in the lineup. You had Lyle Miller Green. You had Kenny Towns. You had Ryan Quadros. You had Bobby Weitzel at the top. Just an abundance of former players to mention who've gone on to play D1 ball in the long history of the team. Now, Logan Driscoll, of course, who's now with the Rays in the MLB. There's a lot of names you could mention, but this year, this is one of the few years where Lake Braddock could really falter in baseball. So, like I said at the preview episode beginning of this year, this could be a year, again, where the Bruins don't make the state tournament with, not just West Springfield being really good, but Alexandria City being up there too. Even West Potomac, they have some good senior pitchers. Now, we'll talk a little bit about that Friday game right now. Austin Dean, the Virginia Tech commit, one of the top 100 prospects as a senior nationally, top 75 actually. You're thinking that he would, maybe dominate against the Bruins, or he would have his bad control issues haunt him again. Well, it was kind of a mix of both. There's a couple innings on Friday where the bad control issues did haunt him for a couple innings. Bruins, though, in a few of those innings, failed to capitalize when it could have to score more runs off West Potomac. He looked really sharp. Bruins were, probably not working the at-bats that they should, trying to fish to see if he would throw those bad out-of-control pitches that are nowhere near the strike zone or are just going to be to the backstop. He doesn't throw a lot of strikes a lot of times. Maybe like 50% strikes most of the time. So, the Bruins probably should have been working better at that and not swinging at first pitch. And I get the whole sense of it's like, oh, well, he's a really tough pitcher. He strikes out a lot of people, so you got to be really aggressive. In case he's going to strike people out, you got to be really aggressive. But against a guy like that who walks so many batters, you have to work better at bats. I feel like there has to be a little bit of a leeway there. We're going to have to tell your hitters to take a couple of pitches so that they can see if he will throw those bad pitches and work them more. Because again, he throws like 9 miles an hour and he's starting. Most pitchers like that are going to wear down really quickly. Bruins weren't doing that. And he got through the 5th inning, 6th inning. Finally, he ran out of gas and the Bruins were able to come back and make it 3-2. 7th inning, or 4-2. They scored 3 runs in an inning. Beg your pardon. Going into the 7th, props to Bo Padgett for pitching a really good game. 7 innings, 2 earned runs. I think he just ran out of steam. He did the best he could. He did allow 4, but 2 of them were unearned on errors. He did best he could. He threw another really good start, continuing to be the Bruins ace this season and doing ace things. In the top of the 8th, again, we couldn't bring on Delomo. Maybe that's a situation where you could say, hey, maybe pitch out bullpen. He could show better. Couldn't pitch him, probably because, you probably saving him for Saturday, the next day. And then you couldn't pitch Jack Cavalario because he was ineligible most likely. So you had to go to Cody Blaylock of a bullpen, which, that's his first high leverage situation this year. He's only come up on a mound when the Bruins were up by a ton of runs. Had to bring in Hudson Drum up from JV, because you had really no pitching at that, because you really had no high leverage pitching at that point. So, Bruins are out of pitching. West Potomac ends up scoring the go-ahead run in the top of the 8th, take a 5-4 lead. Bruins try to rally bottom of the 8th against Liam Cardman. Couldn't do it. And, you could tell the Bruins were very frustrated. I believe it was Matthew Holcomb who struck out to end the game. And, he was slamming his bat down. CJ Prentice was frustrated, striking out a couple times. He was slamming his bat down. So there's a lot of frustration amongst this Bruins team right now to trying to be consistent. Now, maybe they get some momentum this week, facing some weaker Fairfax and South County teams, like we said earlier here on the show. You're maybe hoping that maybe those are games where, the Bruins could maybe turn things around and get on a good streak. Because I believe, and before they go to spring break, there's likely a week of games before spring break. I don't think their spring break gauntlet this year is too tough. I know they're playing like Addison, Hayfield, a couple of national district teams, and then Winston Churchill from Maryland, who's going to be coming down to Braddock, I believe. I could be wrong on that. But shout out to Williams Reactions. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. But, this is an important week for Bruins game momentum. Doesn't matter how bad these teams are, they need to get momentum. Start Jack Cavalario once again. Hopefully those bad losses and hopefully the offense facing all those D1 pitchers may, again, new lineup this year. So, obviously they faced, a lot of really good pitching. Maybe they'll, second time around, they'll build off of that. And next time they'll be a lot better and hopefully they'll be more prepared after seeing them the first time. against West Springfield, Alexandria City with their D1 pitchers, West Potomac of Austin Dean. So, and whoever else has a D1 pitcher, come the time of the state tournament, if they make it that far. I think they still could. Is it as likely as other years? No. Do I think there is room for Bruins to make a state tournament appearance? Yeah, I think eventually. I definitely wouldn't rule it out. I think there is still a chance that they still could, make it to the final Elite Eight once again. But again, a lot has to change for Bruins. They need to start working better at bats in the lineup. Some of the at bats against some of the worst pitchers have not been good. They're desperately really pressing right now. But, there's still some at bats that need to be better. No, Beckett Stour came in an Alexandria City game. He, was after Liam Jones. That was probably a situation where we were down by 4. They were being very aggressive off him, not working good at bats. They weren't really making him work. He wasn't a guy who was as dominant as Liam Jones. He wasn't throwing 90. He was probably like high 70s, low 80s guy. Wasn't too dominant. And so I feel like the Bruins against him could have been working some better at bats in that game. And maybe the Bruins could have come back, not being too aggressive. So they need to work better at bats. Parts mid to bottom part of the lineup need to get going. Pitching, in terms of that, you want to make a big move. Get Cavallari into rotation. Move Leo Delomo down to at least the bullpen when in games that Cavallario pitches, and have him piggyback off Cavallario. Maybe that will change something. Maybe Leo Delomo will feel more comfortable coming out of the bullpen. But there's certainly that's certainly one of the things the Bruins could do right now. So we're going to conclude talking about baseball today on the show. We're going to get into a little bit of softball action, a team that is actually winning right now. So props to the Lady Bruins for going 6-2. Continue this week with some wins over Alexandria City, West Potomac. You talked about them being in that 4-game stretch we did last week. There's free teams with not really a lot of pitching. Bruins have a good pitching, Mackenzie Verdejo. They've been, and they're going to be playing last game of that 4-game stretch where it's kind of weak in terms of pitching on Tuesday at Fairfax. Again, a really bad team they're facing, and so they've been handling the business like they should. Verdejo is still pitching really well. She hit another home run on Friday against West Potomac. Little close game, actually. It was about only like 3-1. West Potomac made it 3-2 at one point. But Lake Braddock broke away, I believe, in the bottom of 6. Mae Bruin hit her first home run in the West Potomac game. Congratulations to her on that. Shout out to Rod Samuel real quick, who, of course, had her 100th career hit. I believe last Friday at Woodson, and she's also the one of the 2 Lake Braddock athletes of the month. So congratulations to her, real quick. Of course, congratulations to Mae Bruin for hitting her first home run. So a couple outfielders doing some good things over there. Mae Bruin also being more consistent this year, something good to see through his first half. It was last year in the second half she kind of really started to cool down, and she wasn't as consistent as you wanted her to be. So she's been doing really well. And so, so the Bruins, been handling the business like they should have. They got some good momentum going. Again, Eva Dubray is hitting better. Hopefully she's been, continuing to hit well. Again, Bruins just need to continue to get some production out of the bottom of that lineup, and they'll be good to go. Top of the lineup, middle part of the order, doing fine. So, they're clicking on some good cylinders right now. A game at Fairfax Tuesday, and then, of course, you set up for a big game hosting South County on Thursday. Of course, that'll be a good game. 2 teams that are near the top of the district right now. Trying to get some big ground going to start the second half. Bruins, of course, will want to win a couple games, before we go down to Myrtle Beach next week for spring break. Play some good teams over there. We'll kind of be previewing some of those teams as well on a next week's pod. So make sure you check out that episode as well. But, of course, South County, that could still be kind of a tough matchup. Of course, they have Rob Pramovich. Longwood commit comes into town. Matty Grice and company. Lauren Maroka. Kylie Gregory. A few very good players over there coming into town over in Burke on Thursday. So, And last time Maddie Grice pitched, it was only like 3 earned runs. Despite some of the struggles she had last year, she's been holding her ground some games this year. So, so that might be a intriguing matchup. Bruins maybe see her better this time, hit her well. And, you're hoping that, that will be a big game. The Bruins can win, get some momentum going into the second half, going into spring break. So just quickly want to hit on Lake Braddock Softball really quick, who's been doing really well, 6-2. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure you leave a like, hit that subscribe button, share this stream with a friend, and turn on notifications so you don't miss another episode of the show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I'll see you next time. Thank you.